Hello, this is the voice of Stuart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of vital conversations that I have with global soul stewards from all over the world who provide us with an understanding of how we can create a new hierarchy of values that is absolutely significant at this unique time of becoming. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. And here we are for another wonderful deep dialogue. So for all of those people, all of you people out there in cyberspace, I say welcome, welcome, welcome. Am I excited to be with you today because I have the most extraordinary lady who is very unique in her position in the UAE. And so I'm going to introduce you to the wonderful Sahar Huneidi, who comes with extraordinary credentials and experience in her pursuit as a wonderful mentor, healer, and psychic for us all. Because I know, having met Sahar many years ago in London when she was living here, she was one of the first instigators of a podcast, which I'd never heard about, and I know that they were extraordinarily successful. So let me tell you who she is officially, as I normally do. So Sahar Huneidi-Palmer is an intuitive life mentor who helps you reorientate or ignite your life into greater creativity and profound soul connection. For nearly 30 years, Sahar has been a soul seeker whilst helping a global outreach of clients, having trained as an holistic therapist. Sahar also has a highly successful internet presence as a life coach columnist. Named 3 times as one of the best 100 psychics in the world, Sahar has helped thousands and thousands upon thousands of global clients to identify what the key block is in their life, the how to get unstuck, and then to become the master mistress of their own destiny. So Sahar's mentoring process is called Unbox The Real You, and is based on the methodology that she calls the 4 dimensions of change, which helps you heal and align your soul's creative being and align your presence and purpose. Sahar, it's wonderful to have you here. I suppose, namaste, darling. That normally it's the other way around. So it's wonderful to have you sitting there.
May I just, before we start, may I just say this? I am grateful to you. As you mentioned, I read about your book back in 2004, 2005. I came to know about you from Merlin News website, and I called you immediately. And you are so big, you are so huge. And I said, Mr. Pierce, can I interview you on a podcast? And you said yes. And I couldn't believe myself. Here you are, the master of voice at the Globe, and he's coming to my flat to do a podcast. I will never forget that. You were so easy to interview, to get along with. And by chance, at that time, I had a client who was a sound engineer, Angie McNee. And I asked her, I said, how do I get the podcast at the frequency of love? And we fixed it, and you came. And to date, they are the highest downloadable podcast. So thank you. And I'm grateful to you for asking me to come on tonight.
Oh God! Well, how it's so wonderful to hear that. You know that we've reached so many people.
Oh,
It's
yes.
it's been an absolute pleasure, and I remember the moment, you know, because I was bringing the alchemy of voice out,
Yes.
and really just opening my wings within the holistic nature of our lives. I mean by that, by formally announcing myself
Yes.
as a
Yes.
practitioner, because as we know, the world, I've had this. This very public identity in the world. And so many people in the corporate zone or in the field of politics that I was working with, they were always very doubtful about my spirituality, as they put it.
Well, it wasn't mainstream, at that time, was it? We were kind of keeping it under our hats. But you've done it, you forged the way, and you made it a lot easier for so many of us to
Well,
come out of the closet.
I'm literally out of the closet. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and as you say, you know, we're talking about what we're over 20 years later, aren't we? And well, nearly 20 years actually, and it is different today. It absolutely is. And there's a wonderful question that I want to ask you about your relocation back into the Middle East.
Yes.
Well, perhaps let's go into that. Perhaps you could just give us a little bit of your antecedents, that your lineage is Jordanian originally. Is that correct?
I'm Palestinian, and I
Palestinian.
carried a Jordanian passport and nationality, obviously, for obvious reasons. And my parents moved to Kuwait. I was born in Cairo, in Egypt. And when I was a few months old, they moved to Kuwait. So Kuwait is kind of my second home. We grew up there. I graduated. I was about to start my own business. I was working in advertising and marketing for an international, very successful advertising agency. And life was just beginning when suddenly the Iraqi invasion took place. And there was kind of like a voice saying, go to England, go to London, go to London. And I couldn't really explain it, but I did my best and I got myself to London, not knowing why. And I decided to stay. And this is when everything else, started opening up. I've always wanted to leave the Middle East and kind of live in the West where I was educated. And I got my British nationality. I bought my flat and I just sat there and I said, okay, this is it. This is the rest of my life. Then suddenly I meet an Englishman. He brings me back to Dubai because of his business. And sadly, my beloved husband passed away. And then I just decided to stay. But I will make my way back home. I do miss it, but it doesn't seem to be yet the right time to do so.
Amazing. What a journey. And when did you really open up within the initiation of your spirit?
I think it happened, oddly enough, during the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. It happened on the 2nd of August, 1990. It was a Thursday, which is the beginning of the weekend. And I was due for a dental checkup. And I don't really like going to the dentist. And I woke up with a nightmare. Yelling top of my head, and my sister woke up and she said, oh, you're just worried about the dentist, go back to sleep. And what happened a few hours later is exactly what I saw in the nightmare. It was the invasion of Kuwait, exactly detail to detail. So I knew that this was it, because we were all quite shocked. No one expected it. And just the night before, we had a corporate party at the agency and we had an astrologer, and nothing like that was predicted. So I was completely taken aback. This was 180 degrees change overnight for all of us, my family, everyone who was in Kuwait. And I just didn't know what to do. None of us did. So we just kind of hung out there. And my parents thought, there has been skirmishes between Kuwait and Iraq. This will be settled. And then I heard this voice that said, no, this is it. We're going to be kind of under siege, for 6 to 8 months. And they looked at me and they said, how do you know that? I said, I don't know. It just came out. And at the time, if you remember, the Iraqis were collecting, like literally, all the expatriates, and they were using them as a human shield. And my brother, who passed away since, was looking for his friend and colleague. And I remember his name, Richard Bob. And he went to Richard's house and he couldn't find him. And we were quite worried. And he came back really anxious and he said, I can't find Richard. And suddenly, it was like a hologram opened up and I saw Richard hiding in an air conditioner vent. So I told my brother, go to the central AC vent, he's hiding there behind the grid. And he's like, what? He did. And he found him and he drove him to the British embassy. And thankfully he was okay. And subsequently, when I moved to England, I met Richard. And it was an amazing experience. So in that trauma, I don't know, maybe it was the right time. Something opened up and suddenly there was a sense of knowing and this information started coming and I just had to follow it. There was a yearning, just do it. There was no doubt. It felt like it was the thing to do for me. And I really wasn't sure how I was going to do that. How was I going to get to England, with what money, because everything was depreciated then. But suddenly, one by one, the obstacles started disappearing. And I got to England. And then my agency said, why don't you come back to headquarters in Cyprus? So I said, okay. And then halfway through, we couldn't quite agree on the contract. And it seemed like I was taken advantage of, offered like 1/3 of my salary. And I thought, this is not right. And I asked what I now call spirit, but that time I just said, please guide me. What do I do? I came back to England, and my cousin, Saida, said, why don't you go and see Marin? She does the tarot. And I said, the tarot? What's the tarot? I had no idea what the tarot was. Marin was a seer. She was the fourth seer in her lineage. Her mom was quite well known on Kensington High Street, in Kensington Market. She worked there for 20 years. I went to Marin. She lived off of King's Road. She opened the door, this amazing woman who is quite creative. She had her design shop on King's Road, soft-spoken, kind of how out of this world, very self-assured and very self-assuring. And she said, I can't read for you. And I said, what do you mean? You have the cards. And she said, no, I only know your future if you know your future and you have been through a trauma. Go, relax, de-traumatize yourself and come back. And I thought, what? I know my future? And she got me there. She was so lovely. And I saw, if you like, a role model there, that it's okay to be on your own. It's okay to be a woman. It's okay to have an unusual job. You will be fine. And I loved her so much. I kept, pestering her and just coming, for tea. And I said, Marin, please teach me. And she said, she's taught in Los Angeles, but not in England. And she said, if you find, 3 other people, then I'll teach you. And by chance, I did. And we started these classes. I started practicing on family. I had extensive family at that time. Sadly, many of them have passed on. We were talking about death and grieving just before we started. And they kept coming back saying, hey, this has happened. Can I have another reading? Can I have another reading? And then my cousin Mona encouraged me. She said, Sahar, why don't you start charging? And this was like, uh-oh moment. This was leaving the corporate world, leaving my civil engineering background and everything that I was educated in. And I thought, okay, well, why not? I am enjoying this. And it was quite rewarding to feel that I could help someone. Because at that time, in 1990, when I left, I was totally lost, totally confused, totally uninspired, and no one could help me or give me the kind of guidance to satisfy my intrigue, my curiosity, because I knew this was a life-changing moment, and it was a big deal. This was the rest of my life. What do I do? And the tarot just seemed to be so natural. I started charging, £5, £10, 15, 20 as I got busy and so on. And, the doors just opened to the point that, I worked in Mayfair, and the local paper there kind of did a short editorial, named me as Mayfair's best kept secret. And I thought, oh my God, this is official. Unbeknown to me, there was a person, an author, calling me from the States, asking questions. I've never met him. At that time, we used fax. This is before the internet. And then after some time, I heard that I was mentioned in his book. And this was Hans Holzer, who was a psychic and UFO investigator. He wrote the Amityville Horror Show. And I was really astounded, and I was mentioned and named, 3 times. At that time, I thought, okay, I better own this. I better accept it, because I'm sure you might know it's a huge step to kind of step out and say, okay, this is who I am. This is what I do. And, 28 years ago, that was very unusual, because psychics, mystics, whatever, were looked upon as kind of where do we fit you? But I don't know whether it was luck, destiny, or my fortune. I'm really grateful that the support was there from friends, family, from spirit. And I had no PR agency at the time, but I got inspired. I did psychic fair on King's Road at the town hall one time. And I wrote to all the press who were handling Body, Mind, Spirit. And, that was like maybe so naive, but, that's what I got. And I wrote to them and I said, look, I'll be there. Come and see me. I'll give you a reading. And they did. And it was the beginning of a friendship with so many of them. And I think, the reviews came, and that kind of put me in a niche where I was very pleased, because it meant that business people, royalties, executives, diplomats could come and not feel strange or weird that they're coming to someone with a crystal ball, flowy robes, or anything like that.
So what's fascinating, if I may just, synthesize so much of what you've just said, because it's very useful information for those people who have a burgeoning talent at this time. And of course, you and I know, would underline this needs to be a burgeoning talent, because there are so many people who are flooding the scene, the arena of mind, body, and spirit, who believe that they actually have a unique trajectory into the world of spirit, but a lot of the information is actually based on fantasy. And so, we're just being legitimizing in the fact that there is this extraordinary skill that we all have, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're setting ourselves up as being professional therapists or professional counselors. However, what was interesting through your story is that we can hear a bell ringing all the way through your story. Sahar, this is your destiny. Sahar, this is your destiny. Sahar, this is your destiny. And of course, understandably, being the pragmatist that you are, coming from the background, particularly the mental body background of having all your ducks in a row, so to speak, from a professional point of view, and working very considerably within marketing, that you would approach it through that lens and market yourself very successfully once you arrived here. But what's wonderful is that there was immediate reciprocity, so that the major magazines within Mind, Body, and Spirit were communicating to you, this is what we feel about your work. We are legitimizing you. And of course, that launched your career. Which is absolutely wonderful. I mean, I feel that there's a useful blueprint, and I'm sure that you've used it in your mentoring practice.
What really helped is having the right mentor, which was Marin Jose for me.
Yeah.
Because she was so spiritual and yet so grounded.
Yeah.
And when I started with her, she'd say, Sahar, go and do the Silva method. And I'm like, what's that? And she said, go and find out. And of course, the Silva method is an amazing course because it is to do with the mind, how to use it, how to expand it. So I worked hard at becoming intuitive, and it was really quite grounded and based in all these, things that Marin said, go and do. So that helped because it was a pragmatic approach. And I remember in, people calling it psychic powers. It isn't, it's an ability. But as you said, it depends if it's your destiny to pursue it and help other people or not. And just because I was getting this positive feedback and people were coming back, that confirmed to me, yes, this is your path, if you see what I mean. Because there's always doubt, should I be doing this? The other side is, I don't know if you've noticed, but really the last 5 to 10 years, there has been quickening, if I lack of a better word, call it, that everyone is becoming more sensitive, more perceptive. Their inner senses are becoming stronger. People in general are eager to find out about intuition, about dreams, whereas before this wasn't a mainstream subject. And dreams were another thing that I worked with through Marin, because of course we are in the higher mind area and the intuition and the psychic ability. And dreams is where you link with the astral world and, communicating with whomever and whatever and seeking guidance. So it seemed like all these courses were confirming, one was confirming the other. They were all from different angles. And that gave me a huge perspective and tools, if you will, to understand where the person was coming from, and therefore, how can I talk to them? Because there were a lot of men, particularly, who are quite kind of, and you have to approach them in a rational way. So I had to find the right language, the right angle. And once you turn the key, then they were more accepting. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed it.
I feel that all you're describing is absolutely wonderfully clear. And just to emphasize it, not because Sahar needs this, but for us all to recognize that what Sahar is giving us a description of is that she was actually being really muscular about developing her craft on all levels.
That's a good way of putting it, yes.
And of course, also on a spiritual level, so that we begin to realize that the signs, symbols, and synchronicity of the spirit world communicating with us automatically allows us to feel that we're in alignment with the most precise trajectory that was formulated, of course, before we came into incarnation, and that the
Yes.
spirit guides are just trying to, hey, knock, 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 are you really going to?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. You know, our awakening. I mean, I've been an initiate for over 45 years, but I knew that there was certain area of my life. I mean, I'm now nearly 70, would you believe, you know, but there was a certain area of my life that I needed to really work through the substance of being a professional voice coach. Obviously, my acting career had come to a close at the end of the 70s. And then, you know, great doors opened. Again, signs, symbols, and synchronicity. So I
Yes.
walked through them. And there I suddenly was walking into Downing Street and working with Margaret Thatcher and so forth and so forth. However, the point is that the age of Aquarius has really brought us to this very interesting portal of shift,
Yes.
where more and more and more of us are asking valuable questions of our lives, particularly when the shit hits the fan. We want to know more about, well, how can I heal this myself so that we become the master mistress of our own destiny? And I know that you do this. You've developed this wonderful mentoring scheme that at the moment you're calling Unbox The Real You. And bearing in mind that we have just gone through this wonderful portal, the winter solstice of
Yes.
2020, I'm sure that you're so busy with people coming to you. Could you give us the constituent parts of what Unbox The Real You is?
Yes, my pleasure. I'd love to. Thank you for asking me. Well, this was really inspired about 2 years ago after my husband passed away, my mom passed away. It was just big trauma. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? And I worked with a business coach in the States. And she said, Sahar, you're mad to work one-on-one. You know, you're a mentor, you're guiding people. I said, what do you mean? And she said, you know, why don't you come up with a package, with a process? And then suddenly the name to me came, which is Unbox The Real You. Because for the past 28 years, what I've been doing, even in the psychic readings, is putting people on the right track. You know, what is your life purpose? What is blocking you and how to get there? And I sat back and I thought, okay, and I was really just thinking about this sitting in the garden, and I realized that anything you want to practice, any modality, any tool can only come under one of these 4 factors, which is the body, whether it's reflexology or healing, well, it's emotions. You have to heal the emotions, what you went through. You have to look at your belief system, which is the mind and the thought process. And finally, which many were not highlighting, is you have to hold yourself accountable. So I call these 4 factors dimensions of change BEMA, simply just to allow people to remember them. So it's body, emotions, mind, and accountability. And when you heal or when you go to a coach or a therapist, they very often look at a specific problem. But we are multidimensional human beings. You can't just heal the body and not change the mindset. You can't get over an emotional trauma, but not put it into perspective with your life experience. So these 4 dimensions have to come into balance or be aligned. And what I found out from personal experience is when they are aligned, something magical happens, is that you claim and own who you are, and you find or connect with what I call your guiding star, which is your inner senses, your intuition. And at that point, you're never ever lost, because this is your radar and you are on your path like that train and you know where you're going. So it's quite worth it to do the work. And I stopped really doing sessions, you know, one-on-one, because I realized you can't just heal one thing and not align or heal or fix the other.
So how do you work now? Because, you know, I mean, I have a huge practice of one-on-one, and I actually find that the work that we do is absolutely quintessential, particularly in relation to, you know, the fact that I met the Angels of Atlantis in '87, but I kept it very quiet for many, many years because of my professional role as a voice coach and, you know, working with politicians magicians who obviously didn't want somebody saying, by the way, I see angels.
They're intrigued, but they don't admit it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, even though Abraham Lincoln said, you know, that the
Yes,
angels were custodians of the galaxy, you know, and picked up by Dr. Martin Luther King. However, could you just once again repeat the 4 dimensions of change?
HEMA: body, emotions, mind, and accountability.
And accountability stretches itself into the world.
You have to be responsible for whatever you did or did not do, because people are so full of guilt, you know, of not doing the right thing or not saying the right thing. The guilt has to go. And for me, when I own up and I say, okay, I messed that up, it is actually empowering, because if I messed it up, I can fix it. And this is where empowerment is, rather than blame it on whatever, the Iraqi invasion or bad circumstance. And I found myself going through this rebirth to confirm the process, you know, particularly since the death of my husband and then my mom, because I thought, you know, what am I going to do? And then it appeared, you know, to me that you are on a journey. Your journey is not over. Continue the work, and it is a process. So I do the psychic readings as one-on-one. That's okay. That's kind of like a general view of your life, where you are, where you fit, what you need to work on. But the mentoring, I think people do need several sessions, you know, be it 3 or 4, to kind of begin to get the 4 dimensions into alignment. Yes. Because they truly change overnight. They really do.
Your mentoring package works on a 4-part series or a 5-part or 6-part. And are you working with the individual, or are you working with the group?
I work online at the moment with individuals.
Yeah.
I worked with a group, a corporation last year. I did an online course because there was a need for it. And it was bought by this all-women organization, which was wonderful. They wanted to strengthen, you know, the female aspect of their business. It was really successful. I'm in the process of repackaging the course online, and then I'll be offering it and selling it to businesses and organizations. Did you notice that businesses are just beginning to be curious? You know, can someone support us who's not a traditional life coach? Because this is really holistic. And I hesitate to use the word holistic, because to a lot of people, it's like mumbo jumbo, but holistic means integrative.
Oh, I
you
see.
bring all the parts together. Otherwise, whatever you fix is going to become unhinged later on.
Yes, and you know, what comes to my consciousness is that I'm really, really glad that you're preparing or reframing your mentoring process so that you can offer it to, in inverted commas, corporate identities, because we know that as we're successfully doing globally, as we move away from the pandemic, that I'm sure for example, in September and October here, the offices will once more become peopled with a lot of people who have been enjoying themselves in the isolation of their homes and working from home, but have not actually discovered that once they come back into the working place, that they're going to be experiencing a lot of really unusual phenomena for themselves, which at the moment we're calling PTSD.
Yes. Yes,
and so you're going to be really, really busy.
I hope so.
And in fact, you know, I give you this as a prophecy. I've just chosen the card from the Oracle.
Thank you.
And it's Radziel.
How wonderful. Thank you, Stephen.
The angel of the Mistress. And it's all about fulfilling your dreams, you see.
Oh, how wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I don't normally do this, but because we resonate so much on a supernatural level that I thought, oh, well, why not? You know?
I appreciate it. Thank you.
It reinforces all our wonderful listeners.
Because that gives me a reinforcement to kind of carry on. Yeah. Well, I tell you where the symbol for Unbox The Real You is a pyramid. I mean, you know, you and I also, we love ancient Egypt, and bits of us still live there. And the pyramid came naturally to me, and the foundation is the physical body, because that's the starting point, and the body does hold everything, memory, emotionally, effective belief system, and so on. And then the second was the emotions, etc. And then the star is at the top. But equally, you could start from the beginning. From the top, if you hold yourself accountable, then that's the beginning of shifting the mindset from victim to co-creator. And how empowering that is, instead of spending your life thinking, I'm a victim, nobody supported me, nobody helped me. So that kind of works together. So the other thing that came to me, infinity, the number 8, infinity, it's kind of like when you reach out for guidance, you ask questions to spirit, if you will, and then the down cycle is getting the answer. And 8 is the number of money, fame, success, making money, corporations. And I thought, it's like governance. If I start from the top, then it will filter down. And I've spent so many years working with individuals, but it will filter up. It had filtered up because they've put themselves on the right track. They've started new businesses. They moved out of the rat race and created a new thing. And I think now the top is ready to kind of work and with people like us, or hear a different side of the story where you bring all these elements, because people are confused. When we all had, lockdown, I read an article in the New York Times, people who were living together got married, and people who were married and in lockdown got divorced. So suddenly we lost, contact with the outside world, and we were forced in a way to look at our life, from inside. And then it was like, oh my God, who am I married to, and then for the others who were not married, they were like, oh my God, why am I wasting time? Life is so short, let me get married. And I thought, wow, so this brings out all these problems. And now people are confused because businesses have closed down. The nature of businesses has changed. A lot of graduates cannot find jobs. So they're just going on to doing masters or even PhD because they can't find the right jobs. Corporations are not hiring graduates. They want people with diverse skills rather than certifications. So what are we to do with all these people whose lives have changed inside out? They don't know who they are, where they belong, what kind of a job, what kind of skills and abilities to develop. But really, what you bring into the workforce is you. So if you is mangled up on the inside, then how can you bring that leadership quality or skilled or ability or whatever it is? How can you win at an interview or stand out if inside is not aligned and is not okay? So for me, both go together. For me, logic and intuition are really the same. I mean, if you look at the whole creation, it's not ad hoc. Obviously, there's logic to it and there's a process. And I don't even know why people are scared of intuition and psych. It's the same. You just
well, I feel, if I may, because
Yeah.
it's fascinating hearing you giving me, giving us all this wonderful commentary on what you're perceiving is going to be the next step of human evolution. I mean, and of course there are many, many parts as you're enlisting, But actually, I'm in this situation where I'm talking to lots of major leaders around the world. And although their points of definition are perhaps slightly different in terms of the semantics, what you're talking about can be completely paralleled by so many of what their perceptions are. So I feel that what you're talking about is a quantum leap, a neo-paradigm aspect, which of course is what Deep Dialogues is really all about. What we're hearing from you is your take on what the next hierarchy of values will be. And the reason why I wanted to intercept at this point is that I feel that the major reason why people are unsure of the intuitive or unsure of the world of spirit is because, as we know, feeling is the language of the soul.
Yes.
And most of us stash our feelings away. I mean, even to the point where when we move into delight, joy, dare I say ecstasy, that we become shameful or guilty about what we're experiencing. And of course, when we move into a higher frequency, all there is delight, thrills, expansion, ecstasy, and so forth. And I don't mean the drug, of course. I'm talking about the way that our biochemistry brings this extraordinary alignment with what I refer to as being the miracle-mindedness of the universe.
Yes, and everything is amplified. And if you haven't experienced that before or allowed it, it's a terrifying feeling because you don't have a reference point. But if you open up your mind and you learn a little bit about it, or you allow yourself to kind of indulge, if you're curious enough and find out, then emotionally, you are going to be more ready and amenable to literally opening up and being the real you. Because, there's a sense of everything is merging, converging, rather than
Yes, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
the essence of co-creativity. So it's no longer the competitive nature
Yes.
of being singular and, fighting or opinionating against
Yes.
one another. It's about coming together and really sharing a common language, which is the language of the heart, the language of the soul.
And speaking of
Um,
that, I support a lot of life coaches, internationally, but also here in Dubai because it's so new and they're all coming out. I repost them, repost their, feed their stories, and they're surprised, like, thank you. And I keep saying, but we are one. Nobody is competing with anybody. And if you appeal to a certain, a group of people, all the merrier. Good for you, because it is about us helping each other. Otherwise, how are we going to elevate with our consciousness and raise our vibration? We're all going to go through the eye of the needle. So we might as well drop the baggage and really support each other, because as human beings, as you very well know, we cannot exist alone. We don't exist
yeah.
alone. We co-create all the time.
Yes. So isn't it interesting, from forced isolation, we're all going through the healthy social systems and
Yes.
the reinvented social organisms of our communities as we spring out of COVID. And it's
Yeah.
obvious that we're recording this in July 2021. It's obvious that as we look around the world, although there is still the evidence of COVID, that social systems are beginning to open up. And as we're saying, we will see the business community be able to reinvent itself in some way during the fall. I
Thanks
love the way
to,
that you talk about the pinnacle, the pinnacle of the pyramid,
yeah,
being
the guiding star.
accountability, the guiding star, and accountability, because it's, I feel that what you're doing is redefining the classical concept of integrity, and how the only way that we can live in integrity is if the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies are in absolute alignment. And thereby, as we're seeing in the growth of extraordinary exposition around mental health,
Yes.
particularly, I advise everybody as we record in July 2021 to please watch the Oprah series, The Me You Do Not See, because it is an immense evocation of what Sahar's talking about, and particularly in relation to, can we please all cease blaming and accusing others and find insight and resolution into the way that we can resolve the problems that we're seeing before us. Because as Gandhi was saying, be the change you want to see, that whatever you see on the outside of you is a mirror image of what is going on within. So I think it's absolutely wonderful what you're doing.
And I think, oh gosh, bless you. And so many people are on antidepressants, and what do antidepressants do? They really numb you. But unless you look on the inside and you ask yourself, I need to bring all these factors together. And I've helped so many people to come off. And I mean, that wasn't the objective, but what happens when you do the mentoring, you really become alive and you realize, I'm not depressed. Maybe I'm just languishing because I don't know where to go now. Maybe I just feel confused, despondent, because I don't know where the exit is, because everything has changed. Excuse me. So it's important to come alive now, and it's important to realize that there is an exit, and don't feel down and don't feel guilty and hit rock bottom just because you don't know that you can open the door and find an exit. Work with someone, ask a mentor, a therapist, whatever it is, but do it holistically and own up without the guilt. If I've messed up, I can fix this. I've done just a few days ago a podcast with a client of mine at her request, because she insisted. And I called it Lena Got Her Life Back, because she really did. She was totally traumatized living in Lebanon, after all the explosion.
Oh, Lena.
Yeah, whom you know. Yeah, she adores you. And she said, I must tell my story. And I said, okay. And we did this podcast. And she was totally immobile, paralyzed, in bed for months, not able to move. And we had to work under unusual circumstances. So we were texting and voice texting because, there's no internet and it depends. And she couldn't write or get up or do anything. And I promise you, and she'd tell you, within 50 days or so, she got her life back. She got up, she let go of the antidepressants. She was able to move. She's relaunching her business. She's full of, the woman has come alive.
Well done.
And people don't realize this. And I'm working with a fascinating businesswoman in Dubai, a local Emirati, very intelligent, and she's been on antidepressants. And I said, why? And as we poked, she wasn't really depressed about, whatever. She's happily married. Her husband is amazing. He's an architect, together. I mean, they have an amazing friendship. And as it turned out, after 4 sessions, that she was frustrated about her business and she didn't know in what direction to take, because she felt, I need to establish myself on my own, not with partners. And the minute the lid came off, the pot, it's like, oh, the lights were back on again. And she is not so reliant on the antidepressant. And I said, with the help of your doctor, please bring it down. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is a lot of mental health is there, because the person is not being dealt with as a body, mind, soul. There's an aspect of spirit, there's an aspect of emotions, not just the mindset, and they need to go together. We need to release the emotional trauma. And if you don't know how to do that, then it will always stay there. But when you work in synergy, the effect and the change, people are changing so quickly now. Did you notice that? It's like there's something
it's huge.
It's available to everyone. You can change quickly. You don't need to be forever in a program or whatever.
That's something that you and I have always talked about, isn't it?
Yes.
That actually we don't need to go into psychotherapy for the next 30
Yes.
years. We need to find a precise, holistic way of being able to really identify the keys. And what I would love to say at this juncture of our conversation, because it's an immensely vital conversation, and it obviously is happening in many other pockets of the world, particularly, as I was saying earlier, Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry's exposition of what mental ill health or mental health is all about, that we're talking about people that are experientially depressed and not clinically depressed.
Yes.
And if anybody is listening who is, experiencing unusual phenomenon within yourself, and you believe yourself to be clinically depressed or moving into neuroses or indeed deeper forms of psychoses, please reach out to a qualified therapist and they will help you. But at the same time, our caveat is, once you've used the drug therapy to facilitate liberation, do not become addicted to it. That's really what we're saying. The addiction is the denial of personal.
Because it will numb you and it will hold you back. But I just want to say something else. And thanks to you, you've made me early on, in the early 2000s, so much aware of the voice and the power of the voice. And to the point that when a client calls or leaves a voice text message, I can tell what their issue is, whether they're going to show up or not, whether they're going to be late, what kind of a client they're going to be. And more than that, I think universally, we are really at this chakra. We've taken a leap. We were in the heart chakra. Now we're here. You have to sound authentic. You have to act in an integrous way. Other people are going to find out, if you're just there for money or commercially or lying to them and they're not improving. You have to choose the right words. You have to think about how you're going to line up your words, what you're going to say. So we're here, and antidepressant will numb that. But if you learn, if you are someone suffering from mental health, if you just learn to express yourself, take the time, voice it out, even if it's to yourself. Because very often we can reprogram ourselves by hearing our own voice. I don't know if you talk to yourself a lot. I talk to myself a lot all the time,
I have great conversations with myself, and like you, I live alone. And so, there are wonderful times when I reach into my hermitage, and here I am. Sometimes I don't even want to go out. So I'm here in my own juices, in my all oneness with the divine. But of course I don't speak. And then suddenly I realize, wow, what's happened to my voice? So I start talking to myself, because after all, we're talking about a muscle. But the key that you've just stated is absolutely ravishing, because you were talking about, on one level, depressed energy. And as you were quoting in your case study with the wonderfully successful business lady who had a very successful marriage, et cetera, but something was not in alignment. So she felt depressed. And in fact, she wasn't depressed at all. She was just holding back within a depression of her life. And that what you did was to get her to start expressing, and automatically whatever she was experiencing in the depression automatically moved through this wonderful alchemy. And I mean, I'm making it sound very simple. I know there are multi-layers to what you did with your client, but
It is simple. The
very
process is
light at the end of the tunnel. It's very
yeah.
simple.
Yeah, but it's the experience and having worked with so many clients, and it is the intuition and the psychic ability that kind of makes me really focus and see where the problem is. And also from their voice. I had another client but she didn't want to face her issue, but we worked on her goals. And I could tell from her restrained voice that the problem wasn't in business, but it was in her marriage, but she wasn't ready to talk about it. But I've supported her in her business. And again, she came alive because she found her calling. She started the business. She's helping so many artists. It's just amazing what it can do. And I can't say that I just do that like that. It is the experience. It is the intuition that, we've both worked so hard to kind of accept and develop and own. But it's also, when you work with someone, I feel so responsible because literally their life is between my hands. So when I show up, I have to be aligned. I should have done my meditation and aligned myself before I speak, because my clients let me know. I had a client who said, "Oh, Sahar, you're rather aggressive today." And I thought, wow, that wasn't my intention, And of course, I apologized, and I took a step back and I thought, oh my God, what is bugging me? And I realized that I haven't done grieving yet, and I gave myself the space to grieve because, it just came out. And I realized with a few other people that I was quite aggressive, but, that's not my nature. But I owned up for it. And I said, okay, what is happening here? Why am I pissing these people off? I love them, whether they're clients or close friends. And when I did, the guidance came, grieve, let go, because you're still hurting. And I couldn't understand, why would the love of my life leave until, I had not a premonition, it was actually an apparition of my, I don't know, my brother. It would just seem to connect kind of telepathically. And he said, look, we're all on a journey and we're going to the same destination, but some people—
And this is your brother in spirit?
Yes, my brother in spirit, yes. And he said, some people get off the bus earlier than others. And I thought, oh my God, if I'm holding on, then I'm not honoring my late husband's journey. And yes, I'm grieving the loss, but the anger has gone, because I wasn't angry anymore. Why did you take him? And I realized, oh my God, this is not to do with me. This is his path. And maybe he's continuing on with something else. Maybe this is great for him. I wasn't able to accept that when my brother passed away, but the pain was greater, maybe with my husband, that I had to look in deeper. And then the revelation came. And him and I really enjoyed trains. We used to have a train and just really play around the flat in London. And I keep that today to remind me that we all have our journey. So no matter what the loss is, and I think the greatest the loss, the greatest the love, because, the loss is the price of love, isn't it? And I felt so fortunate that I have been loved, that I've shared that love. And I'm saying all of this really to help uplift someone who needs to hear this. Death is not the end of it all. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, but part of celebrating someone's life is accepting that they have to continue with their journey, and then you honoring your own journey. And that revelation alone just gave me such a push to continue and reinvent what I do and who I am. So I stopped asking, who am I? Now my thing is, who am I becoming? Because I realized everything is changing and evolving. And if you want to evolve and grow, you can't stay fixed between a certain paradigm. You won't grow. So you have to let go of the ego and the identity. And it's such a liberating feeling, to focus on what am I becoming rather than how do I define myself. And therefore, unbox the real you. Because after all, we are intelligence or spirit having a human experience. So we might as well know about these two aspects, which is the spirit and being human.
Fantastic. So if I may just interject for a moment. So there's a wonderful definition of grief, which is just synthesizing what you've already shared with us, but you're moving quite fast and you're sharing some extraordinary insights into the nature of human intelligence, and particularly human intelligence at this time, as you say, as we re-inherit, as we really subscribe to our divine blueprint by recognizing that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Grief is the loss of something that has value and matters.
Lovely. Absolutely.
And, you know, really what we're both saying is that we need to not disparage grief or try to dissolve
Take it
grief.
personally.
We
Yeah.
need to ritualize what our grief is all about. And because we're living the element of weight, space, and time, the elements of weight, space, and time, it takes time to really honor what that process is all about that is God-given, so that we can actually then draw all of those energy lines away from the internal area of our body or our energy field that were once connected to the dear ones. And so we allow them to move on their own journey.
Yes.
You know, I mean, as you know, I've been working with female cancer for now 40 years because of the, you know, the great shift of my own career from being an actor to a voice coach. It was stimulated by the death of my mother. I nursed her for a whole year while she died of cancer. And then she went, and there was the extraordinary mystical experience where she came and visited me. I won't go into it now, but she came. And I knew that it was preparing me for the fact that that was a huge initiation or rite of passage into understanding from a holistic point of view the nature of how cancer impinges on our lives.
Oh, yes.
And what I've always noticed with the cancer sufferers, when they choose to not heal the cancer, but to go on another journey back into spirit, where literally we close our eyes and then open them again in the world of spirit, it isn't the pain that we think it's going to be.
No.
That actually the people that need my help more are not the dear departed one or the person that is preparing, but the relations.
Survivors, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So we're really honoring the substance of grief, you know, and it reminds me of a story of a very, very dear friend of mine that I've just connected with after a long time of not seeing, that you would love Mary. She's an Irish psychic who lives in the United Kingdom, in London, but works through wise woman retreats all over the world. And one of her big retreats was actually in the Sinai with Palestinian and with Israeli women coming together. And the substance of the retreat was grieving.
Fantastic.
Because and you can imagine what it was like, you know, this extraordinary frisson of energy when these women arrived, with all of the hatred that would be there, understandably, because of tribal conflict, which of course, as we know, goes back. I mean, you much better than anybody else because of your antecedents. But how at the end of the retreat, that suddenly all of these wonderful women were hugging and releasing the terminal grief and sorrow.
That is so
recognizing that all of the dear ones that they were grieving visited, you see, because each one had to create an altar to the ancestors and then ritualize around the altar. And as a result of that, suddenly spirit came in to give information about, oh, why are you still full of loss? I'm having fun over here.
Yes. I think when you express it through the body, you know, whether you shout or yell or have a ritual or act it out or speak to them out loud, whatever it is, you're allowing that energy to move out of your body. And that is an amazing thing. And it works very, very quickly. And of course, there isn't a best way of grieving. Everyone is an individual. Everyone have their own way. And I'm very grateful to a client of mine, Megan Patel, who texted me and said, Sahar, grieve whichever way you want to. You want to wear black. You don't want to talk to people, don't talk to people. And it was so comforting to hear this. Because, you know, you often get, oh, Sahar, you're grieving too quickly, or you're grieving too slowly. You can't. It's an energy that has to move. And I found that what really helped is talking out loud, but also writing them a letter, because it just helps me to focus and connect energetically. And you just have to find your way. And I think with these women in the desert and doing these rituals, they've literally brought their grieving to life, and then it was able to move. So good for them.
That's a beautiful analogy. They brought their grieving to life. But so often our grieving is a dead thing. and
Yeah.
it dies within us. And actually, it's a fundamental part of the
Yes.
glory and the wonder and the awesomeness of what it is to be these spiritual beings having a human experience. You know,
You
because
know,
obviously there is no loss in source. It's something that we experience here because of density.
I want to say two things. What I've noticed since my father passed away back in 1995, every time a close loved one passes away, I kind of felt in an abstract way this support and push, whether in my career or in my life. It's, you never lose that connection. In fact, you have more of a tribal support from up there because, you know, spirit or energy are always doing their work. Energy is indestructible, so nobody dies, really, if you want to talk about it in a scientific way. The other thing that came to me, you know, a couple of years ago, I was sitting in the garden here in Dubai. I've lost my mom within 10 months of losing Andrew, which was just too much because they were the binary star that my life was revolving around. And I sat on my own and I'm staring at this hibiscus bush that I have. And half of it was dead and half of it was absolutely blooming. And I just thought, what is going on here? And I realized, I mean, I saw it in nature that death is part of life. It is part of nature. And like this tree, half of it was dying to make room for the other half to grow, you know, in the middle of the heat, in the middle of the summer. And in an abstract way, you know, my mind made the link. And I thought, oh my God, now that they've moved both of them out of my way, now, you know, the onus is on me to kind of wake up and think, what is my own life path now? What is my life goal? And I can't hide behind them or supporting them or being a wife or being a daughter anymore. And that was quite daunting. So I was also grieving the loss of my type of life, if you will. And as you said, you know, nature, we always get a slap when, okay, time to move on now. You know, you've passed this now, but we don't realize it was quite comforting to settle in a certain rhythm. But of course, death is always shocking, but it can shock you into life, is what I'm trying to say, you know.
Yeah, I hear you. And, you know, we're recognizing a constituent part of this is that we're waking up to the fact that change is all that we have, you know, that this belief in permanency is based on an illusion. It doesn't exist, that we're part of an infinitely unfolding
The only permanent thing is change.
Yeah. And so as we embrace change, we begin to recognize that we've fixed ourselves in pathways of codependency, particularly in our personal relationships, which is actually not about unconditional love. It's purely about conditions. So you know, we're honoring the weaker side of self or the uncertain sense of self, rather than seeing that we're the master mistress of our own destiny. And we're absolutely powerful as we begin to move forward and create the creative destinies that we want in full alignment with accountability.
Yes, it doesn't have to be codependency. You know, sometimes you're happily married, you have children, you enjoy that life, and then you forget that you have a life of your own and you have goals of your own. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, but you see, the reason why that takes place, and I think this is a really powerful point, the reason why this takes place is that we become so locked into, we've forgotten our own lives. So we become responsible for, and that leads towards unconscious.
And maybe addicted to it because it's so pleasurable, you know, and then we forget who we are, and we're also a human being.
The comfort zone.
The comfort zone, exactly.
And that's what you're saying, really, that when loss comes along, when death comes along, it slaps us.
Pushes you.
We move out of comfort zone, we get really uncomfortable. And that's a place of such quanta in terms of our potential experience. Although, of course, I'm not wishing loss onto anybody. We're just, what we're doing is really evaluating the strength of the human experience. And there's, I won't go into it now because it's quite a long story, but there's an anthropomorphic story, which I'll tell you afterwards. And what I'll do, everybody, is I'll include the story in my next series of illumination, okay? Because it's a long story. And it's about an entire tribe of chimpanzees in the wild and how they experienced depression and how they experienced grief and what zoologists discovered about we humans as a result of watching these chimpanzees. It's a really fascinating story. Well, unfortunately, I mean, this is such an exciting conversation, but we're moving towards closure. completion, because there's always a point of completion.
Yes, of course,
And
of
then there's
course.
a death, and then there's a resurrection, then there's another death, and there's another resurrection. I just wondered, you know, I mean, obviously we know that we can get hold of you through www.saharhuneidi.com.
That's right.
Could you just spell your name so everybody can hear it slowly, please, so they can write it
Yes.
down?
It's Sahar Huneidi, HUNEIDI.com.
And I'll make sure it'll be in the bio underneath the video in the
Yes.
library online.
And if it's easier, on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is Sahar Palmer. So, and then you will find my website also there. And I'm on Clubhouse. I don't know yet what to do with it, but there we are. We're going to start doing something. Perhaps we'll do something together.
Yeah,
Steve.
let's do a Clubhouse, because people keep saying to me, would you like to do a Clubhouse? Alan Steinfeld called me the other day, darling, let's do a Clubhouse. And I said,
it's your area. It's all about the voice.
Alan is this, you know, this major propagator of all things mind, body, and spirit on the eastern seaboard of the US, you know, and I mean,
Yes.
Alan knows everybody and has become a very, very dear friend of mine. So let's do a Clubhouse. Let's do a Clubhouse. I'm a virgin at the moment, but I'm about to lose my virginity.
I'll be wonderful to do something together. It's all about the voice, and we resonate, and you know, we might as well explore it and see how it goes. Yes. I mean, I've been on a lot of Clubhouse whatever meetings and rooms, you know, so I can lead you through that. It's fun. Yeah. And it's kind of nice because people can focus on the voice, on the sound, as opposed to be, you know, distracted visually, you know, as you were on Instagram or other platforms. Very interesting. Stuart, thank you so much.
There's just one point that I'd love to just re-emphasize that you brought up. And it really, the point is couched in, do you have one final brilliant thought for the listener that is also arising from your spirit at this time about your own specific trajectory? I mean, that's what I'd love to ask you. You know, because I'm sort of wanting to guide us all to the pinnacle point of what our exchange is about, of what deep dialogues are all about, and what this time of quantum leap experience is all about. And it seems to me that we're really honing our authenticity.
Yes, we need to be in the present. If we need to heal, we need to be in the present. If we need to heal the past, we don't need to go back to it or honor it. We can go in through the present, through connecting with whatever we're feeling in the present. So many people get so despondent about worrying about the future. And I almost always tell my clients, the future is like a garden. You're planting the seeds in the present. So by spending too much time in the past or too much time worrying about the future, you forget the now. And it is in the now that we can evolve, that we can define what our path is, that we can heal, that we can recharge, that we can connect, support each other, but also help each other to evolve. So the whole life is now, and we miss the now by being distracted by so many things which are unreal. What is real? It's that feeling here in the heart. I often tell my clients, forget your brain, think with your heart, because this doesn't lie. When this feels good, you know, you can't fake it. It's like when you go into a property and you feel, ah, yes, it's home. Or you meet someone and you say, yes, I'll work with them or I'll be with them. It's from here. Here gets messed up because it's partly human. And then you have to deal with all the belief system, but here does not lie. And you taught me this, if words arise from the heart, then they will reach the heart. And I find when I speak my truth, it resonates. But I have to find me first. And what is my truth? And then it comes out naturally. And this is how change happens. So don't lie to yourself. Listen to your own voice. Choose your words well. And whatever makes your heart smile, that is the right thing. It's the right decision. It's the right job. It's the right home. It's the right person. It's the right direction. It's the right whatever it is. Feel it from here and don't complicate stuff that is to do with your mind, because that is lower mind. but higher mind just comes to you. It's so easy. All you have to do is really
Beautiful. Wonderful synthesization.
thank you.
Okay, everybody, did we get that? Unfortunately, we will have to bring our wonderful deep dialogue to a close. And so from the bottom of my heart, the depth of my soul, Sahar, thank you so much for bringing
Stuart. I'm
your,
so
your
grateful to this.
wonderful
Thank
Middle
you.
Eastern wisdom into
Yes.
all areas of the world, because I know there are, wherever you are, you're floating in cyberspace, but you're also rooted to a very unique territory,
I
which
appreciate
also
this.
needs to be honored.
Thank
And
you
so
so much.
everybody, please, go to Stuart Pearce YouTube page, click subscribe, and you will automatically receive lots of information about deep dialogues like the one that I've had with Sahar Huneidi.
Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, and any questions.
Exactly.
I can
Lots of comments. And go to Stuart Pearce The Voice on Instagram, or indeed Stuart Pearce Master of Voice on Facebook. Bless you, everybody. Namaste, namaste. Sahar, stay where you are, please. And thank you, everybody. Au revoir.